I remember sitting in that ICU room, and he was in a deep sleep or coma, whatever. And I remember thinking, I think our mortgage is due today or tomorrow. And not knowing if he was going to wake up or anything, I remember leaning over and saying, Roger, I don't know what to do. I know we have our mortgage due, and I don't know where to go.
Welcome to the True Wealth Podcast, where happiness is more often found in the soul of someone's wealth rather than the size of it. Money, after all, is a tool. It's not the destination. Money is the fuel to advance your core values and purpose. Join us as we share some inspiring stories, true wealth life lessons, and practical strategies to help you design a life of intention, generosity, and fulfillment. Guests on the True Wealth Podcast are not affiliated with CWM LLC. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Hey, True Wealth Nation. I am so excited for today's episode because you're in for a special treat. Regular listeners will know from recent episodes that we have been going through the various life stages, and it was our plan to move right into the 9 principles of true wealth, but every so often, the right conversation and guests come along, and we just have to pause, change course, mainly because the conversation is just too good, and it deserves an immediate space in the series. The conversation in this episode is similar to what would happen in one of our coffee and conversation groups, like Conversations with Widows or Conversations with Widowers, Navigating Life After Divorce. It's centered around people navigating similar life experiences, offering connection, perspective, and understanding. The conversations could be around any of the life stages or life celebrations, or even shared struggles. Now, we're joined in the studio with co-host Ryan Ovenden, along with our friends and special guests, Jan and Sandy. The conversations today carry with it a vulnerable heart that includes depth, honesty, challenges, hope, and direction. A special thank you to Jan and Sandy for sharing a conversation about each of their stories. Now, this could possibly go longer than our regular episodes, but no worries. Maybe we're just going to turn it into 2. We're honored to share this conversation with you, and we invite you to listen with an open heart. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Well, we are so excited about this episode of the True Wealth Podcast. We have 2 special guests with us today. We have Jan Noer and Sandy Fink, some what feels like very long time friends. We've been working together for a few years now, but I feel like I've known you for a long time. So we have Jan and Sandy on the podcast today to talk about the experience that they've had, both becoming widows at about the same time. And we want to share their story today with the goal of really getting in depth on what they've learned through their experience, and with the goal of helping all of our listeners to be able to hopefully implement some of the things that they have implemented and learn from what they've learned, so that they can heal in a positive way, the way that Jan and Sandy have. So Jan and Sandy, thank you so much for being here. First of all, I want to ask you guys to just take a moment to introduce yourselves to our audience. Why don't we start with Sandy? Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you.
I'm Sandy Fink. I'm Jan's older sister, even though nobody can believe that. Just kidding. I have 3 children. Jim and I were married for 51 years before he passed in March of 24. He passed of Alzheimer's. We've been so blessed to have Ryan getting us through this, Jim's death and through all of our financial things. I've never had anyone like him to help me, and it's just been wonderful for me.
Well, thank you, Jan. First of all, you're too kind.
Yeah.
You were doing a great job on your own, but we had done some planning that I think really helped in the long term to shorten that time period, where when you feel like the dust is settling and you can finally feel like you have a control of things again, and you feel like you're not drowning. It's amazing how planning can help with that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But Jan, I want you to introduce yourself as well. Jan Noer.
Yes, I'm Sandy's younger sister, and I grew up in Sioux Falls and went to Augustana College, graduated, and got married after the year after graduation. And I also have 3 children. And my husband and Roger was a pastor, and so we did some moving around in our lives. We first lived in Mobridge, South Dakota, and then we moved to Fairfield, Montana for 3 years, lived in Rapid City for 8 years, lived in Aberdeen for 29 years, and then moved to Sioux Falls in our retirement 13 years ago. So we've lived here for the last 13 years, and my husband had a stroke in 2021, and we've navigated this life now the last 3.5, 4 years, and I agree with Sand. I'm so grateful that we found Ryan, and I'll tell you about that later.
Well, thank you. So why don't we start with you, Jan? Tell me more about Raj. You said Raj was a pastor, and so you guys moved around. And just to give you guys some context here, Jan and Raj are the people who know everyone. If one of them doesn't know someone, the other one did know them at one point or another, and they have contacts all over the place. Raj was an amazing pastor, made a huge impact in people's lives. And so he was busy a lot. He was gone a lot, but you were a teacher as well. You were a kindergarten teacher, so you were gone a lot as well. Tell me, in the chaos of life, raising kids, living life together, doing ministry together, when it came to your finances, who was in charge of the finances, and what was your financial role while you were married and raising kids and that sort of thing?
That's a really good question, because Sandy and I grew up in a house where finances were a constant stress for our mom and dad. And things were never handled in a very appropriate way financially. So Sandy and I never really had a very healthy view of how to even navigate finances. So when Roger and I got married, he's older than me. He was 7 years older than me. So I was just fresh out of college. I was a terrible money manager. I honestly was, and because I never knew how. And so Roger had lived alone for 7 years before I came along. And so he kind of naturally took over that financial part of our life. And honestly, it was partly my fault, because I just was a little afraid of it. I think I had kind of PTSD from growing up with financial difficulties. And so I think I buried my head in the sand a lot and let Roger just kind of take over on that with that. And I was busy doing other things. So we kind of had our roles, and it seems, I don't know, from when I've talked to people, it's either one. It seems like it's either one or the other. I don't know. That's the way it was in our house anyway.
Right. So Rod kind of managed the finances. Mm-hmm. He was older. He had this gentle shepherding spirit about him, very grace filled, but also had this responsibility aura about him. I mean, he was a guy who was going to take care of his family. So he basically ran the finances, right? He paid the bills, made sure everybody was okay. And you were okay delegating that, right? Okay.
I was, and it's interesting being a pastor too, because when we moved from Mobridge to Fairfield, Montana, we moved into a parsonage, so we didn't own our own house. I'm sure we got some pay from the congregation to save. And I mean, it just seemed like there were some really slim years that finances were really an issue when we were in Montana, also overflowing into when we were in Rapid City, because we were starting a family. I wasn't working outside the home. He wasn't in a profession that he was making very much money. And I remember living paycheck to paycheck and feeling like, okay, it's Monday and we have $10 in our checking account to last until Thursday, and just watching that so closely. And it wasn't a good time to, it was very stressful.
Yeah.
I would have to say,
Yeah.
even though we were doing the best we could, but
Right. Yeah. I mean, you both chose professions
Yes.
that were service professions that were putting other people first, investing in other people. And from what I know of both of you, that's what you spent your life doing, was investing in others. And so, but it's interesting on the other side of it now, where I think there's some more confidence in your finances than there maybe have been. And you're in a better position than you maybe ever thought that you could have been in.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see how God provides.
It is.
Even and especially through the hard times.
It is.
But then you develop these habits and you go, okay, well, maybe this is kind of my area of expertise. This is my corner. I'll stay in my lane. And the finances aren't my lane. But at a certain point, if the person who lives the longest is not the financial person, that can create some difficulty too. And we'll get into that in a minute. But I want to hear from Sandy first too. Sandy, tell me more about your story with Jim, because Jim was a military man. So you guys were similar to Jan in that you didn't have one house that you lived in for 50 years, correct? There was some moving around and raising of kids and a totally different scenario. Tell me more about that.
Well, actually, Jim was a physician assistant, and his military background was he was in the reserves for about 20 some years after being in it for 4 years. Active when he was younger. So he kind of had both jobs, and would be the weekend once a month that he would go down to Omaha. He would be at Offutt. And like Jan said, we grew up in a family where you always knew when their finances were not good. But they didn't talk about it, but we knew it. And so when Jim and I got married, we talked about financial things, and he really encouraged me to be in charge of the finances, but we did it together for a long time. And then after a while, I just took it over because he just was fine with me doing it. And like with Jan said, there were some years that were like, and I stayed home for about 10, 11 years while we had our children and went back to work. So there were some slim years there where Jim was a physician assistant, but he wasn't making that much money. He was the first one in South Dakota. So he was just kind of the newbie. So salary wasn't real.
He was the groundbreaker, right?
Yeah, he was the groundbreaker.
Yeah.
So, I remember times like, how are we going to get to the next paycheck, and I was in charge of it. So, I was usually pretty more stressed than Jim would be about it, but so in that way, I'm very, very grateful that I was the one doing the financial things, because when Jim passed, it was something that I had already known how to do and was able to do. And I think that's important as I look back now, how important it is for both of the people in the relationship that should be really doing it together. So, because you never know if one's left or the other. And like I say, Ryan, you helped us so much more, and we're doing way better than we ever thought we would, or I ever thought I would. So,
Well, we can help on, the things like the tax planning and the, income planning, and how are the investments doing, and do we need insurance for this or that? But from a day-to-day basis, when I asked the question, who was kind of in charge of finances? Are you guys talking about paying the bills, making sure that the lights are on, that sort of thing? Who would you say was maybe helping, who was in charge of that portion, the other portion? Maybe like what do we do with the 401k? Do we have enough life insurance? Were you both involved?
In our relationship, we both were part of that.
Yeah.
I did do the day-to-day financial things.
And Jan,
paying the bills.
How about you?
Well, Roger, again, a lot of that was through the church, through the, and he understood that program. So I guess I would have to say he was kind of the one. I mean, we did talk about things. It wasn't like I was totally oblivious to what our financial situation was, but I would say that, when he would go to a meeting or something and the pastors would talk about what they're doing, and I guess I just sort of felt like I knew, I had confidence that he was doing what we needed to do. On the other hand, I remember a couple of times going on a date with him and having supper. And the first thing, even before we'd order a glass of wine, he'd bring out either he'd write on the napkin or something, "Oh, our financial situation." It's like, we're out on a date.
Yeah.
We don't need to know our financial. We didn't always choose the right times to talk about it. Or I should say, he didn't.
Right.
He isn't here to defend him.
Right.
So
I could see that though. I mean, it's hard from a husband's perspective. It's hard if you're the one in charge of the finances. How do you communicate with your wife in a way that she wants to be communicated with that isn't going to cause stress?
Right.
Because usually in a relationship, and I've found that with a number of our clients, it's not even necessarily a male or female thing. It's one of us is just more comfortable with money and with numbers, and one of them's not as comfortable.
Right.
And a lot of times, we end up not necessarily communicating and saying, okay, well, Jan, you're going to do this and this and this, and I'm going to do this and this and this. It's more of you fall into it and go, well, I guess I'm in charge.
Right. Yes.
I guess somebody has to pay the bills. So
and
that's
he
me.
liked that. And we would often say, he would say to me, "Jan, you should take over some of this." And I would want to, but then it just kind of worked out that I didn't. So, when he had his stroke, I just remember feeling like, I remember sitting in that ICU room and he was in a deep sleep or coma, whatever. And I remember thinking, I think our mortgage is due today or tomorrow. And not knowing if he was going to wake up or anything, I remember leaning over and saying, "Roger, I don't know what to do. I know we have our mortgage due, and I don't know where to go." And he didn't respond for like a minute, maybe two, maybe it was even 30 seconds, but it seemed like a long time. And then he said, "Go see," he named two young women at U.S. Bank that he loved banking with these young women. But when he said that, it was just like, oh my gosh, you're going to be okay. And he wasn't, but anyway, that was my beginning, my kickoff.
Yeah. So tell me more about that. What would you suggest? Because people listening don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they're going to go through in the future. What could have been done in advance to help you to have more confidence that things are going to be okay, even if let's say Raj is incapacitated for a month, and I just need to make sure that everything is paid for. Did you guys ever have a discussion about, did you have access to the ability to pay all of the bills and know where to do all of that?
Sure. We had a kind of a ledger thing, and we had a system, and we both were very aware of, I was very aware of what the system was, and I knew where everything was. So that part of it wasn't hard. But the part that I really needed help with was when we went to our tax preparer, and it was more of getting like an overall picture of where we were financially. We had pieces in different places and nothing was in the same place. And I think that was my frustration, was wanting to get everything in one place so I knew exactly where we were. And so I asked our tax preparer. We've had people along the way. We had a Thrivent, a friend with Thrivent, and we had some money with Thrivent, so we had somebody kind of helping us there and da da da. But nobody really as a financial advisor. And so when I was asking Connie about that, she probably took a breath for half a second and said, "I've got a name for you. His name is Ryan." And so I was the first one who came, Roger and I were the first ones who came to Ryan. And honestly, once we met, it was like instantly I had this feeling that I could rely on Ryan. And Ryan, I know you're very humble, but you were amazing, and you helped us pull our picture together. And even, I could not have done that without you. And so I'm.
Well, thank you.
Then Jan got me coming. Raj
I did.
Jim and I, and
right
same-
after
same
the
thing.
day I was here, the day I called Sand right when I got home, and I said, "Sandy, you need to go to Ryan."
I know.
And you
We were
did.
kind of in the same situation. We had money here. We had a few different things to, and you just helped us pull it all together and see. I mean, yeah, it's just you've been a godsend, honestly, because it's just, I don't know how I would have done it without you. Really.
Well, you're both too kind, first of all. But I will say this: I am blessed to work for an organization that believes very strongly in not being salespeople and not being brokers who just focus on investments, but being holistic financial planners.
Yep.
And I think that's where that's one of the biggest benefits to working with someone on your finances, to having a third party that you hire to be your financial advisor, is if they have the heart that wants to know about everything so we can help with everything, that really helps in these transition periods where you at least have somebody who knows where everything is. Even if we don't manage everything for you, we know where it is. We know who to call. We've set up kind of these checks and balances to make sure that if something were to happen to either of you, that the other one, especially if the one who lives the longest life is the one who is the least financially interested or savvy, feels confident that, hey, we've got things together.
And for us too, Ryan, I'm just going to break in here. Two things. Holistic, I love that word, because when I was thinking about Pinnacle Wealth and where you work, and I feel that when I walk in, I feel like you all care about us, and it isn't just our money. You don't want just our money, because we don't have that much of it, but but
Speak for yourself.
I was going to say, well, more now after this podcast. I'm sure it's going to go viral, and your check will be in the mail.
That's right. No, but honestly, that holistic, you care about our whole being, and I love that.
No, it's the first time in my life we've ever had anybody.
I know,
like
us,
this. That is,
for me too.
It's not just it's not a business. It's a personal thing.
It is.
I feel.
Well, that's the way we all feel about it, and I feel, honestly, I mean, Dave Ramsey. One of the things Dave Ramsey teaches, and he's not for everybody, but he always says, find somebody with the heart of a teacher, because the heart of a teacher, as you know, as a teacher, the best teachers are the people that you go, you know what, I know they care about me,
Right.
and so now I'm interested in what they have to say.
Right.
Yes.
And so try to find someone who can help you as a couple if you have not been through this before, but maybe you're a pre-retirement or in retirement and saying, there are a lot of, we deal with a lot of males in particular who are do-it-yourselfers who say, I can do
Yeah,
the investments
you're right.
myself, but I would argue that you better make sure that your significant other feels the same,
Right.
because if they don't, they're going to be on their own to figure out
Right.
why you were invested the way you were, how you were planning on taking income, how that impacts taxes. And your spouse might not be as interested as you are in this. So it may be worth it to start a relationship while you're both alive, which we both did. We did in both of your cases, where the husband and the wife get to feel comfortable with someone and feel comfortable that, you know what, when the Lord calls me home, I can go home with confidence that my spouse is taken care of.
And beyond that, I feel so good that my children, when I go home to be with the Lord and Roger, that they have a place to come, and it's all one place where they can get it all figured out.
Right.
And, or you have it all figured out. And it just, there's such a peace of mind in that respect too.
And us, and for you and
For
us.
sure.
My kids are the same way. They are so grateful
Yeah.
that I've been able to do this, and I've gone over a lot of the plan with them, and so they're comfortable with it. And no, it's just been a wonderful situation.
Well, now that we've painted the rosy picture and Ryan feels good about himself, now let's get into some of the stuff that's a little bit harder, because it's one thing to plan for these things and to have a plan in place, but it's another thing to actually go through this in real time. There's grief. There's all kinds of advice that you get in the middle of grief. None of us know when we are going home to be with the Lord or when our spouse is. So you can prepare to an extent, but you can't be fully prepared. So there were some things that maybe each of you weren't prepared for that may have been a surprise. Would you guys be willing to share with us what were some of the surprises for you after your spouse died that maybe you just hadn't even considered before, that might be helpful for our audience?
Well, in my case, my husband had Alzheimer's, so I had time before he passed to prepare some things before he died. Like I had my checking account in my kids' names, and my savings, our savings account, and had gotten and gone down to our lawyer and put the kids' names on our and everything that I could change.
Yeah, having them the power of attorney, so they can.
So they were just. So that was all done. I thought, wow, this is great. And I went to Social Security and checked out what's going to happen. I didn't get it, figured out yet. But once he passed, I did. But, it was like really peace of mind for them, peace of mind for me. And I thought, oh, I'm good. I made a whole big folder of all this stuff I've been doing.
Super organized. Sandy is super organized.
Organized and labeled and things like that. Well, then, because my husband was in the military, there were, in the reserves for many years, I didn't realize some of the things that would be available possibly after he passed. I knew, and we had started getting a few benefits maybe a year before he passed, which we didn't even know we could do those years before. But anyway, so after he passed, I found out that there were some survivor benefits you could apply for. There was the grave marker that could be paid for it, but you have to apply for all this stuff. And that was more of a hassle for me, because I had to go through all of his old papers, didn't find everything, but tried to find everything that the military required to apply for all these things. So that took me almost a year after he passed.
Well, and we're talking about one of the more organized families with where they had their documents.
Yeah.
I mean, Jim was very organized. You were very organized. A lot of military families have things, pretty organized, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be a 2-week process and everything's going to be better now, right? It takes a while. So what are the expectations? What expectations should people have for time frame for, when to get back to kind of a new normal?
Well,
I
I'm
think
still working on one thing, and Jim's been gone a year and a half. It's through the military. It's a survivor benefit, which I don't even know that I would qualify for, but someone encouraged me to do it. And this guy keeps checking on. He says, well, your number's coming up pretty soon. That was over a year ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm not even planning on that. But things like that, and I'm fine if it doesn't work out. But it's like, you just, I don't know. The first after they've died right away, you're just grieving so much. You don't even think about all the things that maybe need to be done.
Yeah.
Now the next year, this has been over a year now, and now I'm realizing he's not coming back. There's things that just really I have to do because it's not going to get done if I don't. And I don't have a lot of things to do, but it takes a long time, and you have to be patient, and you have to be diligent about checking on things all the time.
and it isn't even that stuff. It's just everything that all of a sudden you're alone and you're making decisions about things, not necessarily financial things, but just life.
Right.
And
that's hard.
life decisions that you think we've always kind of relied on each other for those kinds of things. And I think that's something that
Right.
has been it's like, wow, I should have had a V8 sort of a feeling whenever that happens. And it happens so many times that you just want somebody there to say, could you just tell me what to do? And
We've had those conversations,
yes,
haven't we?
we have. And I was going to say, I didn't have quite as much like of the paperwork kind of things you had, San, but, just kind of, again, pulling things together and signing papers and doing things. I remember talking to you, Ryan, after 2 or 3 months and just saying, oh my gosh, it feels like there's always something that, and I can't be specific about what it is, but it just, you had said to me so calmly, just, if you're 4 to 6 months, even it can take 4 to 6 months. Cause I was thinking, okay, like you, I was pretty organized. And,
Two weeks.
I was kind of planning. I mean, I knew Roger, he was in hospice, so I knew he was dying, but I don't think you ever really know that they're dying until they die. And anyway, but I do remember you just advising me or telling me, Jan, it's going to take some time, and I'm not the most patient person in the world. So, I wanted that sooner, but anyway, you can't rush it.
There are so many things that are out of your control at that point.
right.
Not only have you lost your spouse, but you're dealing with multiple government organizations,
Right.
multiple private organizations, all of whom have their own timelines that they will respond when they want to.
Right.
And so one of the things that we found is the hardest to take is when you're not getting responses
Right.
from
what's
these
so hard.
places.
Yeah.
And you have to make multiple phone calls and talk to multiple different people in order to get one thing accomplished.
I remember doing that with you, Ryan, and I
do
was
too.
so grateful for you because you would say, we're just going to sit here and we'll do this together. And I'm not one who likes to make those kind of phone calls. And it was
Or
so,
even know how to make those
no,
phone
I
calls or
know.
who to
And
call.
it was so, it was,
great.
I
Yes, me
know,
too.
it really felt so much easier to be able to sit with you. And you were always, honestly, when I would call you and say, Ryan, what about this? And you'd say, just come on over. I'd
Always open.
set up an appointment or something, or I would pop in sometimes even, I'm sure. And
Probably while I was golfing, taking a nap.
you're usually napping when I came
Yeah,
back.
usually napping. But yeah, we had multiple conversations. I mean, there's difficult things. I mean, if you have a student loan that you still have your name on, or if you have a debt that hasn't been paid off of some kind and it has your spouse's name on it, and they won't talk to you because it's not your social security. There are so many of these things that you just take for granted that become issues if they don't get taken care of. So I guess one idea is this bigger picture of financial planning and how helpful that is. But even when you do financial planning, it's going to be at least a 4 to 6 month process. If you don't have a plan in place, this is where we see the stories that we have trusts that go
Yep.
on for 20 years
Yep.
after they were supposed to, that things don't get wrapped up and we end up with money sitting at the state and unclaimed property. And those become bigger disasters
Right.
that yeah, it's not months, we're talking years to fix. And so some of this pre-planning and this holistic planning really does save years of time to have access to the wealth that you've accumulated, so that you can use it for what
Right.
you feel called to
Right.
moving forward and kind of creating this new normal. So I guess let's transition to the kind of this last phase of this creating a new normal. How did you guys, you'll hear a lot of counselors and a lot of people, well-meaning people that will say, hey, don't make any financial decisions for the first year after your spouse passes away. And although that's very good advice, it's also missed opportunities too. So for example, if you are filing jointly, this will be the last year that you file jointly. And when you move to filing as a single individual, right now our tax code says you pay higher tax rate
Right.
if you make the same amount of income. Well, not only that, your Social Security goes from 2 Social Securities to 1.
Right.
Even if you get the step up to the bigger one, you're still living on a lower income. And for most of us, living on at a higher tax rate
Right.
on a lower income. It's called the widow's tax. It's a terrible thing. For anyone in the government listening, please do call our office. I would love to talk to you about that. It's a terrible thing that needs to be fixed. But it is what it is for right now.
Right.
So these provide planning opportunities that require fairly quick decisions, especially if you lose a spouse in the second half of the year. If your spouse dies in October, it doesn't give you a lot of time
Right.
to do Roth conversions or things like that in the last year that you can file
Sure.
at a higher tax rate. So we'll write an article on this, and we'll provide a link in this podcast to explain some of those details on the specifics more. But just talk to me about this idea of how do you move forward in a way that's still productive and making progress and purposeful in this new norm. How did you find purpose, a kind of new purpose in your lives? Both of you really were caretakers for a number of years with your spouses.
Right.
And so you go from multiple doctor's appointments per week, so you're all over the place, to what does life look like, kind of getting to make my own schedule. And what does a new normal look like? How did you transition into that?
Well, I feel like for me, I was so stuck at home, really. I mean, I did have a gal that would come 4 or 5 hours a week that would come and stay with Jim if I needed to go places. But when I needed to go, it was usually to a doctor's appointment or get grocery or something like that. Although I could take Jim along, but he didn't always want to stay in the car the whole time. Anyway, so that was when Jim passed. It was like, wow, I have freedom, but what do I really want to do? And I took my time. I think you just have to take time grieving, but I was able to. Jan and I, both of us, we had our mother to take care of too before our husbands died. Our mother died 6 months before Jim died, and so she was in a facility, but she was very needy for a lot of things. And so Jan and I were the ones that did that. So we would always have all our husbands along, so we felt like we did have a lot of caregiving going on, and it's just because they're our loved ones, and we did it. We wanted to do it. But then once, that was kind of all over with, it was like, whoa, you're right. You have to think about, what do I want to do? And I wasn't real quick to just jump into the things I used to do. I was thought, I've done stuff so many years of my life in the church and doing things. I kind of want to start doing some things that I really want to do, but just something that's going to fulfill me a little bit more.
Well, and haven't had the opportunity to do things that are, and I don't want to say like me focused, but there needs to be some, there's some things that I really want to accomplish and some purpose in my life that now I have the freedom and the time and the schedule to do.
And not feel guilty about it. That's I'm always a feel guilty person.
I think you're not alone.
Yeah. And you just think, well, I don't want it to be all about me, like you said. But, and with Jan, we kind of have gone through a lot of this together with our husbands dying so close together and just being so close. So that has helped me a lot. And I've got wonderful friends, and I've got two of my children here in town, one in Omaha. I don't know. It's just, you just start relying on those kinds of things. And I think for the first year, it was, it was difficult. It was just like, you feel like you're just kind of going through the motions to be with people and do things. And then you start realizing, well, this is going to be your life for the rest of the way, the rest of your life. He's not coming back. And you don't wish that, but it's a big transition. And I never thought I'd be going through this kind of, when you're younger, you don't think of this happening.
Right.
And so as we get to be our age, and now I've got friends that are now going through this same thing. And so I feel like I want to help them if I can. And because, we all just kind of need each other.
We do.
It helps us all get through it all. And so I'm in a good place right now. I feel like I'm having a good time getting together with friends, and life is just different.
Yeah.
It's not as much fun to go different places, like traveling or going places, but you just do what you can do and be grateful for what you have. I'm so grateful I have a lot in my life I'm grateful for.
I would agree, Sam, that, oh my gosh, that first year after Roger died, it was really hard because he needed me so much. I was 95% of how he got anywhere. And I really had to be there when he was moving from place to place. So it was really pretty constant, his caregiving. And I think after he died, I just felt like, what's my purpose anymore? He was my purpose for 2.5 years. And I was grateful for him to be my purpose too. I really was. We had, for as hard as it was, we had some beautiful times too. And, but it was hard. And I felt too like, I was just kind of doing what I needed to do, going through the motions. Our kids, my kids were always wanting to make sure, how are you doing, Mom? And I was always bucking up and doing fine.
Yeah.
But and Sand and I had each other, and we relied so much on each other, and we're just in, have similar interests, obviously. And and I had my church, and I have a full life, but it's not quite as full as it used to be. And so it is a matter of, you could either stay home and be sad, or just kind of get moving. And we both volunteer, we both go to coffee, we both, we do things. And
You both went on a trip.
We both went on a
with
cruise.
your brother, right?
Yes,
A cruise.
yes.
Yep.
And we are going to Florida together, and I'm going. Yeah. So, we are continuing to do things. It's not the fun that it used to be, that's for sure. But, we just
finding.
Right.
We are, and we're not gone yet.
No.
So I'm hearing finding the support system is really, really
for
important.
sure.
during this time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was in an Alzheimer group. Now we're in a grief kind of a grief group that Jan's formed through their church, and that's been wonderful too, to talk to other people that you're not alone going through this.
Yeah.
And that's just been to me, I just have really enjoyed that too. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think at Pinnacle, we would like to start a widows group at some point. So if we do that, we will link some information to this podcast for anyone who's interested, who doesn't have a group. If you already have support, you don't have to have 15 different support groups. You certainly can make us one of yours. But if you don't have someone out there to lean on, there are people who love you and care about you, who want to invest in you and make sure that you're not alone in this.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
Yeah. If I would have known I was going to be a widow, I would have loved a group like that. I mean, I was in a group before Jim died at our church, was led by one of our doctors in the congregation, which was wonderful. But I just think it's important when you are going through this to any illness, doesn't have to be Alzheimer's, but any group is just really helpful. And there's just so many things you can learn from each other.
Well, not only that, you've got a community of people who are sort of going through something similar, and there's a closeness that you develop that you really, it's unique.
Right.
And
totally.
you just, it's not something that everybody understands because they haven't been through it. And I certainly didn't understand it before Roger died. And, I hope
You bond with these people that you probably would never know before.
Sure.
So you find new ways of bonding.
New connections.
It's wonderful.
And then we also, somebody will say, well, have you taken care of this yet? And, you kind of, things kind of just, which would be awesome to have a group like that here.
Wonderful.
So
I would have loved it that before.
Yeah. Well, and I guess my prayer would be that everyone listening has a Sandy or a Jan in their life, or both. Not everyone has a sister who they live in the same town and have the relationship that these two have. So I just want to really thank you guys for being on the podcast and sharing your story today. Why don't we close with this? If you guys have any advice for someone who has recently lost a spouse, what if you could narrow that advice down to a couple of talking points? What would you tell somebody listening who this is fresh and they're feeling like I'm in a fog right now and I don't know what to do? What would you tell those people?
I would hope I would tell somebody else who is maybe gone through this to reach out, because it's something that if you've gone through it, and Sandy and I are much more sensitive to what somebody else might need or want if they're going through this, because we've been through it. And I just think that finding someone to hang on to and
I agree. I mean, you just never dreamed you were going to be doing this. So,
no.
Yeah, if you can just find someone, well, like I was saying, I have a couple friends that are going through this same thing with their husbands who are having Alzheimer's, and they're doing what they can, but they're reaping anything they can get from anybody else that's gone through it. And I mean, to me, that's just the best thing you can do. It makes
That's
you feel
what God
like
wants us to do.
Right,
We
we
need
have
to
to
be there
share
for
and
each other. And
so-
One of my pastors used to say, we were not made to live life alone.
Right.
We're
That's
made to
right.
be in community.
Yeah.
And community is so important
It is.
when you're going through hard times,
Yeah.
but also when people around you are going through hard times,
Right.
because sometimes you need to be that rock
Right.
that somebody
That's
can
right.
lean on.
Right.
So we would encourage you all to find some community then. And if you don't have community right now, I'll volunteer Sandy and Jan.
Yes, call Sandy and Jack.
Yeah. The coffee's on us.
Oh.
Yeah, we would love to introduce you to some people who can be your support system. So thank you two so much for being on. Thank you for just being authentic women who are willing to share your stories, talk about your husbands who are great men. I hope that this is an honoring time in their memory and an honoring time to your marriages, and hopefully your kids are listening to this at some point and they've cracked a smile at some point.
Yeah.
I would imagine they do anytime you two get together. So
No, they roll their eyes.
they roll their eyes and then they smile.
And but they know they're going to be us someday.
We're turning into my mom.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ryan.
Thank you so much for being on. And for you listening, we hope that you join us for another podcast of the True Wealth Podcast. And we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Ryan, and a huge shout of thanks and gratitude to Jan and Sandy for sharing their stories. I am confident this is going to speak to so many listeners Because some of the most meaningful conversations don't just happen in classrooms and conference rooms. They happen when people with shared experiences sit together, unhurried, open, and honest. So if this speaks to you and you'd like to learn more about starting or joining a coffee and conversations group, reach out, start a conversation, and invite others. Or you can send us a note to info@pinnaclewealth.com. If you'd like to jumpstart the process, call us at 605-271-6023, or if you're outside the 605 area code, toll-free works 866-575-2500. If you enjoyed today's episodes, be sure to like it, subscribe, or follow, and then share it with a friend. True wealth is meant to be shared, and sometimes all it takes is a solid cup of coffee and a simple conversation. Thanks for joining us. We hope you're experiencing a life of true wealth and a life confidently enjoyed. We'll see you again soon. Guests on the True Wealth Podcast are not affiliated with CWM LLC. Investment advisory services are offered through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.